The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the 2 o'clock webinar today. This is 9 tips to master your next campaign and why that matters. My name is Rick Angeloni. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I'm a design principal at ASI. I've been here with the company now for 11 years. I've got over 25 years experience in advertising and marketing. I have past careers at Dow Jones and Prime Media, working on lots of publications, lots of marketing material, direct mail, web, print, you name it. So I'm here to walk you through this seminar today. And this is primarily a design seminar and a lot of how-to and how to do good design and what good design is. And we're going to talk about a lot of the simple basics behind what good design is. I want to remind you, too, that at the end of this session, we will take your questions that you can put in via the chat feature as we go through this webinar. Feel free to ask anything and all, and we'll get to it towards the end. I want to congratulate you guys for joining ASI and being with us today, and I also want to thank you very much for being with us today. And I want to talk about how we're going to make this all worthwhile for you guys and what the bottom line is. And the bottom line really is we want you to be generating leads with your advertising. And that's what this webinar is all about, getting that phone ringing. So we're going to talk about branding consistency. We're going to talk about the difference between graphics and photography. We're going to get into one of my favorite topics, which is typography, and how to provide something in return, and a lot more in between. So without further ado, I want to get started. The single most important thing I always feel in preparing your advertising, whether it's direct response or direct mail, whether it's a tile ad, but today we're talking more about display ads, and that's to have a message in mind. You really need to know your audience. You need to understand and define the goals that you have for your product, thereby, making your goals for the ad, of course. One of the biggest things I always talk about is creating a unique selling proposition, or at least having one, and that is the most important thing for your product. Why should I choose your product over other products? And of course, here's a couple of samples that I want to talk about. These go hand in hand with that message in mind. On the left-hand side, we've got Bam Bam's Roll-A-Bana ad. And these guys know their audience. They know that this is a great giveaway. This is a large advertising space, and they're saying it. And they're saying it really succinctly, really simply. And of course, we've got a great audience shot and seeing those banners in use. That's another big thing I'll talk about through this seminar is showing your products in use as much as you can. On the right-hand side, we've got a Ritter pen ad. And their main selling point there was to express that they've got great creative quality on the outside of this pen as well as on the inside. These are German-made pens. These are really superior pens, and they want to express that as much as possible. One other big thing here I like to talk about, too, is a big hero shot of this pen on the right-hand side. So this is a nice tight close-up of the detail, and the little thing that is really unique about this pen is this little flag where the brand sits. It's a little flap that's sort of on the pen, and that's kind of very unique about this pen. My next important topic is having consistent branding. Far too often, advertisers want to change up their ad every time every time out of the gate, and it's not something you want to do. You've got to have patience. You've got to be consistent with using your brand and your company voice and having all those messages consistent across different mediums. Of course, you want to have an updated logo. If you've got an old nostalgic logo, that can sometimes be good, but you want to make sure that it is still fresh and that it's still updated and that it's still new. And you can make those changes to an older logo, let's say, and still have that nostalgic look and feel, but it's updated. You see that done by many companies across the board in all kinds of industries all the time. What I am going to encourage you to not do is to resist changing your logo too often. You may be tired of it because you're looking at it for a long time, but your audience hasn't been looking at it for that long, and they don't see it as often as you do. So you really want to stick with that kind of stuff. I've got an interesting stat here that says, 45% of the brand's image can be attributed to what it says and how it says it. That gets back to your knowing your audience and defining those goals up front and having that clear and consistent messaging. Some nice branding pieces that I wanted to show you guys here is how this company, CDI, is using the consistent branding through three different pieces of creative mediums. So for instance, we're looking at, on the left-hand side, a print ad. In the middle was a email express piece, so that's an email blast. And on the right side is just a small tile ad. But you can see that across the board, we're sharing the same message. We're sharing the same kind of visual. We're being very consistent about that messaging across the board and across different mediums. We're going to touch a little bit, we're going to touch more on that later a little bit in the seminar. And the takeaway here is you want readers to be connected with your ads, no matter how they're seeing them. So you want to use similar colors, similar images, and messages that familiarize the reader and keep them connected between the different channels. And you're seeing that quite clearly here. Again, as the client and as the creator of these, you're seeing these over and over again, but your audience is not seeing them as much as you. So it's important that they keep seeing and keep hearing the same thing across every channel that you're working. Next is selecting the right color scheme. You want to obviously be consistent using your brand colors. You saw that on the previous sample set. You want to use a limited palette to complement your brand colors too. You don't want to be going too overboard with your color palette, because then that just muddies down your look, your visual, and you want people to be able to key in, again, on one or two really important things about your brand and about the color of your brand. McDonald's is always red and yellow. In our case here, UPS, a very familiar color scheme, and it's a very unique color scheme. Gold and brown, the older colors yellow and brown, and back to the original, it was only brown. But when you think about it, that's very unique and has been unique for many, many years. And that's what's, one thing that's really strong about their brand. On the right-hand side, you're seeing one of our own Power Summit ads, and this is a new campaign that is running for our Laguna location this year. And what you would see through our application of all the pieces here is a very similar look and feel. We're going to be using this logo over and over again, and our brand colors of this nice sort of pool-like blue and other blue hues that you're seeing here, they're going to be used throughout campaigns and throughout every piece that we do. Again, as I said, a common mistake is often using too many colors in your color palette and getting things a little muddy. You want to use pure colors for your primary call to action and neutralize or mute some other colors. So again, we're seeing a lot of, you're seeing the prominence in the call to action for UPS, and the same here in the Power Summit ad. As we move on, my next favorite topic is typography. I'm a real type hound. It's something I've always been interested in. It's something I've mastered, or at least I hope I have over the years. I'm still trying to master it. And typography matters for a lot of reasons. It's going to be the other visual communicator in your ad. And in a lot of cases, it can be a big visual communicator. If you think of billboards that we see every day, we're reading them, in 2 or 3 seconds, and we're reading them fast because the typography is simple, it's clean, it's bold, and that message is short and succinct, and it gets right to us. So to that end, you want to be using only 1 or 2 type styles in your ad. This is another common mistake I often see, that people are applying lots of different type styles to their ad, and more than anything, probably more than the color situation, that's really going to muddy down your messaging. What you want to do is be choosing different weights and different cuts of a single font or the 2 fonts to create a hierarchy of messaging so that you are able to pull out certain important points in your ad that are obviously more important than the other points. You can't have everything be important, because then it would all be on the same playing level and nothing would be heard. So think of it, as tiers of hierarchy, and you want to create maybe 1 or 2, at the most 3 kinds of tiers of hierarchy, or 3 playing fields, let's say, or 3 levels. You want to use type styles that actually make up your logo, if that makes sense in the case of your logo. So if you've got a more typographic-based logo, or regardless if it's image-based, if you've got typography in there, it's a good thing to pick up some of that typography, or have that be one of your fonts that you might use across the board. So here's a couple of examples. I love this AIA ad because it's very simple, it's very clean. It's got that big headline in the upper right corner. The custom gent is a nice ad as well. It's got a serif used font, and it's kind of very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's got a very classic look, and we're doing everything with 2 fonts there. So we've got our serif font that contrasts with the sans serif font, and that creates a nice look, and it also creates a nice tension between the 2 fonts, so that you're, again, creating those different levels. So for instance, your headline and your subpoints and your call to action are things that stand out with, of course, your brand. But other pieces of content on the ad don't necessarily have to stand out as much, like the descriptions of the items. Because once people get focused on your message and your products, then they're going to want to read about your items, and they'll get to them when they want to see them. So you won't be losing anything. So the purpose of any text on your ad is to help customers accomplish their goals. Where do you want them to shop, to learn? Do you want them to be entertained? You want to keep this question in mind when choosing type and trying to match your brand as well. As we move on to our next topic, photos and graphics, one of my big sticking points too is including people in your ad to make that personal connection. Too often I see a lot of ads that are very product heavy, or product heavy only, or product only, and I don't often get a sense of what that product is if it's not in someone's hand or not being used, particularly if it's sitting next to other products, and if you don't have the scale of those products the same, it can be confusing. So as much as possible, I would encourage using people. It also brings an emotional aspect to your ad, and that's a really important selling point, because people buy based on emotion, and if they can reference somebody that's in your ad, if they can feel close to that person because they can relate to it, they're more likely to stick on your ad, read it, and probably buy from it. You want to use graphics to complement the photos and highlight specials. So a burst is a common thing to be using, and you can do the burst all kinds of ways. It doesn't always have to be a star burst. It can be a circular, oval, rectangular, with soft edges, hard edges. It can be more graphically intense if you want. Another good thing, or another big thing that I like to talk about, is white space. Now that's using your page to create tension between items you want people to be reading and a breath where they can visually take a break from the page when they're getting to the next item that you want them to be seeing, whether it's your call to action or special offer. And two examples that I really like here are the Impress Me ad on the left. That's got just, one of the happiest people you could probably see, and a great message, and a really brash message too. They're not afraid to throw a little emotion in there, using an expletive for lack of a better word, but not a harsh one, of course. And on the right, I love the Alexis ad as well. This is a great use of using a lot of white space and communicating a lot of important messages without being overwhelming. The other thing that this Alexis ad does really nicely is it hits on a lot of other points that we talked about. So it's not just about photos and graphics and people using those products, but there's also some really good typography handling here and some type choices. So we can have a lot of copy, we can have a long bullet list, but lots of points that still stick out. And of course, ending it always with their brand. You want to see where that brand is. And I always recommend, when in doubt, you can't go wrong with the lower right corner or the lower center of the page. One thing I am against is using that logo or your company logo to start off a headline. So for instance, if that logo was up here and I was supposed to read it like Alexis Springs, part of every great meeting, I wouldn't really read it that way because visually I'm only seeing the logo. And the problem with that, with the logo at the top of your page, is people may not see your brand. People's eyes at this point in reading are trained to go to the lower right corner, which is somewhere near the bottom of the page, for your brand and for your place of contact. Try not to put that at the top of your page if it's possible. Our next topic is goes along with the photos and graphics, and that's to make sure that you're using printer-friendly images and medium, or printer-friendly images according to the medium that you're using. So, excuse me. But when you're using photographs, we talk about high-resolution photographs, and what we mean by that are 300 dots per inch photographs, or DPI. You'll often hear that acronym DPI, and that's dots per inch. Photographically, that is going to give you the smoothest, cleanest, crispest pictures. A lot of cameras today obviously take pictures that are higher resolution, and that's great too, but in general, the human eye can really not make a lot of difference between 300 DPI and, let's say, 400 or 500 DPI. Maybe you have 1200 DPI, but that's okay. It's not really necessary. 300 DPI would be your max that is recommended for DPI dots per inch. And that's also because it'll keep the file size pretty small. It won't make a huge file size. Now, when you're using more vector-based graphics, and for lack of a better word here, I'll call these illustrations or things that are non-photographic. That's what we mean by vector-based. And those are classically, those are classically formatted as either AI or EPS files, most typically EPS files. The AI happens to stand for the application that they're created in, which is Adobe Illustrator. And I'm sure you guys are all familiar with that, but if not, I'd like to throw that in. And the basic difference between the two is that the AI and EPS files are actually going to have a smooth curve, and photographic files are going to have a little bit of a rasterized curve. And that's when you sort of see that stepping in pixels in a graphic. And you can tell, if you can see those pixels with the naked eye when you print something out as a test, you know that your image is too low resolution and you need something that's a little higher. So a couple examples here are the drumline ad on the left and the eye mark on the right. And the eye mark I like to bring up because it's a really beautiful classic photo. It's what I'd like to call a real beauty shot of the product. Everything is crisp and clear. This was shot at a very large scale at high resolution, so that when we brought it down to this size page, and these are typically like 8 by 10 pages in real life, it is still a very crisp, clean image. And I also like the way that iMark is presenting this image too on the page. Again, getting back to some other things that we've talked about. They're using a lot of white space. They have a very important selling proposition in their headline, that they're affordable quality. Their stuff is really terrific looking, and it's not overly priced. So they've made a really beautiful ad. And on the Drumline side, we've got some really crisp, clean images of their products, which range and run the gamut from notepads and calendars to coasters. And in each case, they shoot their material double scale and at high resolution. So again, when we bring that down, we're getting really tight, crisp resolution on all these pictures. And our seventh tip here, I want to talk about relating to your audience. This gets back to one of our earlier points in defining your goals and knowing your audience. You want to be targeting your demographic as much as you can. You want to make your ad relevant to potential users. So again, bringing people into the ad is always a good thing for making that connection, for relating them to your products. And one of the big things I like to say too is be connected to the outside world. The best work comes out of our culture. So you want to be looking around you all the time for inspiration, for little learning points. You know, think about your product and think about when you're in the world and you're seeing people use your kind of product, whether it's a pen or a box of chocolates they've just been given, or if it's T-shirts they're wearing. You want to see how they're acting and how they're behaving in those things. Along those lines, something that's really big is telling a story. So relating to your audience in the sense of a story and not just telling them, you know, that they should be buying, buying, buying. You want to tell them why they should be buying from you and what makes sense along those ways. You know, there's an old adage that goes, tell me a truth and I'll believe it, but tell me a story and it's going to live in my heart forever. You know, so if you're making that emotional connection to your potential buyers, they're going to remember a nice story as opposed to, you know, you've got a big sale and here it is today. So I encourage more of that. And I always feel like Hanes is doing a really good job at telling really simple stories with their advertising. It's a real artsy shot. It's a real close-up shot. It's real relatable in the sense that we're wearing a lot of this clothing today. This is a real situation of somebody playing music that looks genuine and it doesn't look staged. And the LAT stuff is the same way. You know, we're seeing a family story here. We're seeing a family with their with the LAT products, and of course the dog is really hitting it and sort of bringing that emotion home too, and it's drawing you into the ad. And again, it's relating to their audience. And of course, you know, I can't go without talking about incorporating the call to action. Hello?
Rick, I have a question from the audience. The question is how, the question is how important is it to have a distributed version and an end-user safe version of a flyer when e-blasting?
Well, I think it's important to have both, and I think it's going to depend on your list and who you're sending to and who you're targeting. I understand the need for both, and you know, in not wanting to go outside your distributor network of people that you work with, you obviously wouldn't want to be exposing your end buyer version and vice versa. But I think it is important to have both. Does that answer the question, I hope?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks,
okay.
Rick.
I think, again, it all depends on that list and who you're sending to. And you should know who you're sending to. Of course, if you're doing a blind send, that's a little trickier. Yeah, so if I can continue then. Thanks for the question. I appreciate that. Sometimes it's a little tough just talking here all alone. I tend to do better with a conversation. Anyway, as we move on, we can't ignore and incorporate a strong call to action. And of course, if that's depending upon that, if that's your distributor version or your end buyer version, those things are going to be different. But either way, you don't want to be putting out an ad where somebody can't contact you or can't contact a distributor who's going to carry your material. So either way, that has to be strong. And since we're talking about end buyer friendly versions, in this case, that's the couple of samples we're looking at here. The wow factor and how we hit the sweet spot from Jomar. They've got strong call to actions, and we also tie that call to action into the product and service beyond the order now or purchase today. So we want to make it stand out with more actionable stuff that's related in the ad as well. So in the case of the Foxyware, it's make your sales sparkle, and in the case of Jomar, it's making your next golf event a success. So we want to tie those things in and customize them as much as we can. And in each case here, we've got fairly large, but not too crazy, on the phone number and on the websites. So again, these ads are also doing a lot of the things that I talked about earlier. So we've got some interesting use of typography here. Believe it or not, in the Foxyware ad, we're using a lot of white space, which I would consider right here, even though there's a photograph of the woman who's got that emotional appeal. That is really a lot of white space. And when I talk about white space, it's not literally white space. It's spaces of breathing in between content and information. And the same thing is true here in the Hit the Sweet Spot ad. And I always love this guy just jumping for joy in this ad. He's got a great look, he's got great color, and he's got a great emotion behind it. Lastly, on our 9th point, we'd like to provide something in return for people, particularly in our ads, as they are, tend to be more B2B, and we're going from your business to your distributor's business or to your end buyer's business. We want to start offering specials like no setup fee or end quantity pricing or no art fee. It's going to encourage them a little bit more to take action if they're getting a little something back. And I think, we all have that experience too from even consumer-based ads that we see every day. If there's a $25 gift card for the first 100 buyers, that might be something we'd be interested in, and it might get us to go out and seek that product. So in the case here, iMark is offering free spec for all their stuff, and on the Carhartt side, they've got a special program in this yellow box here called Carhartt Bucks. And so if you buy a certain amount, like $100, $150, or if you're going to get $20 back or $20 in Carhartt Bucks, so that'll start to accumulate. So that's basically like a rewards program. Other good call-outs or good offers are pointing out your pricing if it's a very important part. So you can say as low as 90 cents. End quantity pricing, free art fee is always a great thing because a lot of your customers may not have art services. So I think that's always is a good message. So again, you want to tell them what's in it for them and not just sell the what, but you want to be selling the why. Why do readers need your product or service, and show them benefits of what's in it for them. So if I was to conclude a little bit, we have a little design checklist of things that you always want to be looking at when you're creating your ad. And to back up a bit, it's those things like creating a consistent message and branding and sticking with your branding, selecting color schemes that go with your branding, using clear, strong typography, incorporating photos and graphics, or both, or either one. Doesn't have to be both necessarily, but making sure those images are print friendly. So whether they are photographic and they need to be 300 dpi, or if they're vector-based EPS files, you want to be sure that they're print friendly. You want to always be relating to your audience. You want to be telling them a story, and you want to be telling them where to call and how to take action, whether that's phone or web or both. And you want to provide a special offer. Now, we've talked a lot about the how of how we create good advertising, good campaigns, consistent campaigns. And now just briefly want to talk about the whys and why that matters. And it matters because this is all an integral part of your company's image and ultimately of you and your products. So you want to be as dressed up as you can be. You want to be as professional as you can be. You want to create conversations that work across media channels. People are gaining access to information in so many ways today, and so you've got to be there. You've got to be in direct mail. You've got to be in email and mobile and web and video and catalogs and social media and print and magazines. So all these things are connected now in generating your campaign and your buzz about your company or your product. You want to be identifying your goals and your budget. You want to understand your audience. You want to develop your campaign's frequency, and then, of course, you want to create it. So that means being sure that you're hitting all those things, that you're hitting direct mail as much as you're hitting your print advertising. You're supporting that with email blasts, and that you've got a consistent website, and that everything is drawn to that website and your phone, or one or the other, but certainly to your website if that's where a lot of the buying is happening. And then you want to measure response to all these things, and you know what? You want to change it up as needed. And by that I mean you may find different channels are working better than other channels. You may find you're missing a channel, so you've got to get into that channel. So again, be cognizant of doing social media, doing print campaigns in magazines and catalogs, making sure you've got some direct mail going out. We often forget about it, we dismiss it a lot, but I'm still a big believer in direct mail. Of course, email, mobile, and web. So, in conclusion, one of my big things is just keeping it simple. I hope a lot of this didn't sound complicated today. I'm a big believer in simplicity. If you go back and we look at a lot of those samples, a lot of those creative samples, you'll see that a lot of them are based on simplicity, on steady design grids, symmetrical grids, asymmetrical grids that sometimes create tension. But above all those things, all those components really are simple in the end. And you want to practice patience. I mean, as much as I said before, just prior to this, you want to change it up. You also, by change it up, I mean not every day, but every 6 months, every 12 months, perhaps. But you do want to practice patience. You don't want to be creating a new print ad every time, every month for, every publication. People will not know and they will not remember who you are if you handle it that way. So please, above all, practice patience with your material. You want to give ads 3 or 4 times before they start to sink in with people, before they make that connection. And you want to experiment as well on top of all this. You can experiment in lots of channels that can change quickly from time to time. So if your email blast didn't do great, you can change that up quickly, and there's not too much harm done, and you can create the next one pretty quickly. those don't have as long a shelf life as your print pieces. So your print pieces you do want to be careful with and practice that patience. And lastly, one of the favorite lines I heard, I can't really take credit for this, but it's nothing kills a bad product faster than good advertising. So once you've mastered this sort of simple assembly of good advertising, once you're happy with that, you've got to make sure that your product stands up to your advertising. So in a sense, if your advertising is really good and your product's not, it's going to show, and your advertising is actually going to expose that. Now, I'm not suggesting anybody here has a bad product, but you've got to be cognizant of that you're selling, or that you're honoring what you're selling, and you're selling the best things that you can be selling. And that once you create good advertising, good campaigns that are hitting all those channels that we just talked about, people are going to know your products. You're going to obviously want your product to be top-notch. And if you don't have a top-notch product, get that one out and get your top-notch one in. So, in conclusion, I want you to take these tips. I want you to use them for your next campaign. And if you need help beyond this, feel free to call your sales rep. Feel free to contact us at this email address here, marketingcampaign@asicentral.com for more information. And don't forget, we're also going to download this presentation, and it will be emailed to each of you once this concludes. So at this moment, I'll take any questions if anybody has any, or we can wind up the webinar. So do I have any questions out there?
I see one. The question is, what's the one most effective advertising medium in 2015? If you had to pick.
Wow, that's a good one. That's a really tough question. I might have to say, if we were looking at this year, that you might be talking about social media. And you want a presence on Facebook. You want to be doing Google advertising. I think in this industry, a presence on Instagram is really important. We've got physical, unique, interesting products that could really do well with the visual presentation you get from Instagram or Pinterest, for that matter. So as big a print guy as I am, I would have to say it's probably going to be social media. Anybody else out there? Well, thank you everybody for attending. I hope you got something out of this webinar. I hope we didn't breeze through it too quickly. If you've got any questions, please feel free, again, to email them back to our previous address, and you'll see that on the PDF download that gets mailed to you pretty soon after this webinar. So thanks again, everybody, and have a great day.